Welcome to Houston Newsmakers, Newsmakers Extra. We've been talking with former Harris County Judge Ed Emmett about just what's going on here. And I thought we need some more time to kind of flesh some of this stuff out. Judge, we're talking about transparency and the need for it. How much more transparency? You said there's not as much transparency as there should be. Where are areas where we need to see more that we're not seeing?
Well, for example, when the decision was made to put up a tent hospital back in the late spring, early summer, it was just an announcement. We're going to do this. We're going to spend all this money, and Commissioners Court were presented with a kind of a fait accompli, when in fact there were many other options that were available. And if the judge in this case had talked to people in emergency management about the various options and the medical center, then probably that money wouldn't have been spent because it was too early. Yeah, there might have been a need later on to have some kind of a surge-oriented hospital, but that wasn't the time and that wasn't the place. And putting tents up in the parking lot of NRG Park at the beginning of hurricane season made no sense at all. And so who gave her that advice? That's what I think we need to know.
Is that kind of transparency something that is available? I don't know that we would ever know who specifically is giving that advice. I guess if you're suggesting you need to ask to know where that advice is coming from.
Well, not only that, if you think back, and again, I know I sound a little bit like a broken record, and a lot of people watching don't even know what a record is, I guess.
Well, we're both old school, so we get it.
but we get it. The offices of emergency management are used to dealing with these types of decisions and conveying them to the public. And I think they have a great respect in the public. To just come out and make an announcement that you're going to do this, the public goes, well, what's this all about and why are we doing it?
Right.
If you remember the press conferences during Harvey, and this is much worse than anything I dealt with. I'll be the first to admit that, because it's uncharted territory. But early on, dealing with weather events, I gave the stage over to Jeff Lindner and said, Jeff, tell people what's going on here. We haven't had that same kind of sort of expertise about a number of issues.
Yeah. Well, as you said, it's something nobody's ever gone through. Everybody's working their way through it. But I'm glad that you're pointing out some of these areas where we can improve. Hey, you're a fellow at the Baker Institute now. And so tell me what that role is and how it differs from your role at the Kinder Institute for Urban Research.
Well, when I first joined Rice University after the 2018 election, the Kinder Institute was very kind, took me in because I'd been county judge of third largest county, so had a little bit of urban background, and I still am doing some things there. But as I jokingly said on the broadcast portion of this, I really was somebody before I was county judge. And in that previous life, I was a transportation policy wonk, if you will. And I actually used to go around the world talking to governments and companies about transportation policy. And that's really where my expertise was. Mm-hmm. So the Baker Institute is an institute for public policy. And so I approached them about having an international transport forum and starting up that area of study again. And so that's been very productive. And I'm in the Center for Energy Studies because being from Texas, you kind of absorb energy policy a little bit. But in my case, I actually was chairman of the House Committee on Energy when I was in the legislature. So being able to get back into policy issues. And then I'm teaching at Rice too, which is very enjoyable. It's been made a little problematic by the COVID-19 crisis.
Sure.
But being able to engage students who are very bright, but don't necessarily know a lot of history. And so at my age and stage, to be able to share some things with them, it's fun to watch them scratch their head and go, "Oh,
Well,
I didn't know that, and I didn't think about that."
Speaking of scratching your head and going, oh, and history, Republican Party certainly looks a lot different than it used to look. What do you think the future of your party is going to be going forward based upon what we've seen, the changes over the last 3 years? I don't think you and I, if we'd had a conversation about this a number of years ago, we would never have thought we would see your party change like it has over the last 3 years.
No, and in fact, I'll try and I could give you an answer for the rest of the day, but I'll try and be brief. The students have asked me, why are you a Republican? Well, when I joined the Republican Party in Texas, there were two parties. There were the liberal Democrats and the conservative Democrats, and virtually no Republicans. And I didn't agree with really either one of those wings of the Democratic Party. And the Republicans were kind of the middle, fiscal conservatives, but still socially conscious. I have to point out in one of those head scratching things for my students, a higher percentage of Republicans in the U.S. Senate voted for the Civil Rights Act than Democrats. And they look at me like, are you kidding? But that was the world we lived in. Since then, of course, the parties have swapped positions in the South,
right,
in many ways. But the bottom line is, all that's history, all that's behind us. If you take a poll today, people under 40 are overwhelmingly more aligned with the Democrats than they are with the Republicans. But both parties have gone to the fringes for the most part. And most people are somewhere toward the middle. They may be center right, they may be center left. But whichever party can sort of come back to the center a little bit, I think it's going to dominate Texas politics for years to come. And I'm not sure how the Republican Party is going to get there, but I suspect that after November, there will be a lot of older people like me who want to give advice and looking for younger people who want to come forward and offer themselves for public service in a more thoughtful, conservative way.